Well, guys, it happened again. I'm really sorry. The week got away on me, so I'm doing another letters show. I'm Sheila Gunn Reid, and you're watching The Gunn Show. As many of you know, in recent weeks, I've been relying on you to help me get through The Gunn Show because I was traveling a lot, and then we were at the G7, and then yesterday was the Canada Day holiday, and so I was unable to book a guest. Usually I film the day before, so there are no catastrophes, and it's easier for me to line up a guest that way. It's easier for me to plan the week. Now you know my logistics, but that just hasn't been the case when I've been out of the studio so much. But thankfully, you all sent me your questions not all that long ago. I put a call out and said, like, hey, I'm doing a lot of out of the studio work over the next little bit. Send me your questions. And you sent me so many questions that I've been able to rely on them for a few different weeks while everything just sort of piled up on me. So I'm doing it again. I still have a bunch of questions for you, or from you to me. And so I thought I would just sit down and continue to answer more of them. And also, if you still have that link in your email that I sent out, I don't know, close to a month ago, calling for your questions, and you have more, send them there, because Lord knows my life isn't going to get any easier or less busy. So I might be calling on you again to be the guest for the Gunn Show. And I promise I'm going to do my best to put together a proper show with a newsmaker that you care about for next week. But for this week, you are the newsmaker that I care about. So let's get into it. Jose asks, what is a healthy amount of carbon in the atmosphere? And are we anywhere close to that? Well, I thought that I would look that up for you. Because according to the climate scaremongers, the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere have never been this high, but that is definitely not true. Prehistoric Earth, when the animals were bigger, because the food they ate was bigger, because there was carbon in the atmosphere that fed the plants and allowed the plants to grow to enormous sizes, which meant that they could support animals that were much longer or larger. The levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere were much higher than they are now, and it led to a greater diversity of the flora and fauna on the face of the earth. So while the climate scaremongers will tell you that today's 419 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is the highest CO2 in 14 million years. 14 million years in the span of the face of the earth is not all that long at all. But they don't want you to have that context whatsoever. Philip says, Carney and his liberals need to leave the autistic youth alone. As far as I'm concerned, he and his liberal cabinet need to be added to the list. They're all crazy. Thank you, Philip. I'm not sure what you mean there, Philip, but do you mean the autistic youth? And I think it's primarily girls that are autistic who are being told they're trans instead of just a regular old autistic girl that interacts with the world differently than other girls. You know, girls are emotional and they're empathetic, and they sort of have that emotional intuition that boys don't have. And so autistic girls, they struggle to interact with the world the way that their other female peers do. And they're frequently being told that they are trans instead of just autistic girls who experience life and emotions differently. And if that's what you mean by the liberals should leave them alone, I absolutely agree. Bill Mulder says, Sheila, thanks for looking after us and delving into areas that are uncomfortable for politicians. Oh, well, you're welcome. My question is, why has the federal or provincial government not held a forensic investigation into the so-called graves at Cameloops Residential School. I know that the band has full control of the site, but if it were anywhere else, if a grave was suspected on a property, the area would be cordoned off and a whole forensic team would be there. Thank you, Bill Mulder, Delta, BC. Yes, you are right. If we are to believe that this is a crime scene, why aren't the RCMP involved in doing forensic crime scene investigation? You know, if a genocide took place there, why isn't the UN there with their genocide investigators? They're actually really good at investigating genocide. They're just real bad at stopping it. You know, there's Rwanda, the Balkans. They're not great at preventing a genocide as it's happening or before it happens, but they are really good at uncovering exactly what went down. And yet they're not here either. Seems odd, right? It's almost like there's money involved and an acknowledgement that the truth is not and has never been what they presented to us. And this was a hoax, a lie that went around the world. Like, look, bad things, I acknowledge completely, bad things happened at Indigenous reserves, as they did at many schools. It was a different time. But a story that started as 215 dead kids in a mass grave has evolved a lot. And, you know, we canceled Canada Day over this. We were called genocide heirs as a nation. And I think to begin the healing, to begin true reconciliation, the first part of the whole truth and reconciliation mantra of the government is truth. And we need the truth so that we can actually know what we're reconciling. And I'm not sure if we'll ever truly know the truth. I think we all have a pretty good idea of what actually happened there. Could be an old septic field. Anomalies on ground penetrating radar are not bodies until we put a shovel in the ground. And that just hasn't happened. And I think we're all left to consider why. All right. Robert Roy says, I'm wondering why nobody ever looks into the abuse of the student worker visas or temporary foreign worker programs. I have personally seen how the abuse takes place. In my case, it's people from India. They are paying the owner of a business $35,000 in some cases cash into his pocket. In exchange, he employs them as temporary foreign workers for 2 years. In one case, after 2 years, the worker does not get her permanent residency. So he was going to charge her another $35,000. Fortunately or unfortunately, depends on how you look at it. The program she came through was no longer available. I've seen him do this to multiple people, and when he employs them, he abuses them. If they make mistakes, he makes them pay the money back. The business is a fast food restaurant. He has 5 of them. Just to clarify, if they make the food wrong or the order, they hand notice incorrect, he makes the employee pay him the money for the product. If they don't close properly at night, he makes them come in and fix whatever issues in the morning. And of course, none of this is paid for. The extra hours is not covered. Why would he ever hire a Canadian when he can make thousands and thousands of dollars by bringing in a foreign worker? You never see the story in the papers. And then he tells me not to read the rest of it on air. And I'm not going to. But, yeah, when you have a temporary foreign worker system that incentivizes people to bring in low unskilled workers and employ them over Canadian students or Canadians, it does a couple things. It makes it rife for abuse, and it drives the average cost of wages down for everybody. It makes people vulnerable. And let's not even talk about bringing in temporary foreign workers to do jobs that Canadian high school kids used to do. The left tells me they're against slavery, but this sure sounds like slavery to me. And then there's the abuse on the other side. So you come in as a temporary foreign worker, you get here, you claim refugee status. And then now you're in the refugee queue and you've disappeared. And then maybe you'll marry a Canadian while you're here. And so all of a sudden you found your way into our country and you're not going home. And we don't have housing for anybody that's already here. We don't have jobs for anybody that's already here. We don't have healthcare for people who are already here. We don't have infrastructure like roads. Have you been on the 401 lately? For people who are already here. We just can't bear the cost. We just can't. And, you know, there's the diploma mills. Everybody's a temporary foreign student. I've opened up Joe Blow Strip Mall, trucking academy, and then temporary foreign students from India come to my trucking academy, and it becomes a diploma mill for temporary foreign students to make their way into Canada and then never leave. But we will never see this addressed by the Liberals because they think the immigration targets are just fine. Actually, they want to fill up this country with 100 million people. 100 million people. It's remarkable. We'll never catch up. We'll never catch up. And the more people we bring, the lower the wages get. Which, again, what are we doing? Importing a slave underclass from the third world? Where's the dignity in that? This one comes from Don Armitage. One other issue that I wish Danielle Smith would insist on is a Triple E Senate. Without that, the 4 Western provinces will continue to be treated as colonies. Okay, so for people from outside of Alberta, because this was a huge issue for Alberta and to some extent Saskatchewan, the Triple E Senate stands for equal, elected, and effective. So elected, accountable to the people. Equal as in equal representation between Alberta and the East based on our population. And effective, as in it should be able to get things done, and if it can't, we'll elect new ones. And that would require cracking open the Constitution and having a big constitutional fight. Do you think the East, who are unfairly weighted in Confederation, are going to agree to that? Of course they won't. Now, Alberta has had some success in doing that without cracking open the Constitution, at least to some extent. It's not equal, but we do elect our senators here. And the convention, the accepted convention, has been that the Prime Minister of the day, previously Stephen Harper, would honor the will of Albertans and appoint the senators we have elected to the Senate. So that was our way of not cracking open the Constitution, causing a big fight. It gave us one of the E's. Nobody else did it, but we did it. And it was up to the prime ministers to respect us enough to choose the people we had chosen for the Senate. Justin Trudeau threw that in the garbage. Completely disregarded the will of our elected senators, or the will of Albertans to have our senators appointed. Mike Shake is what's called a senator in waiting. Erica Barutz is the second senator in waiting. Instead of Erica Barutz, we got Senator Chris Wells, a radical sex activist weirdo. That's who Justin Trudeau chose to reflect the culture of Albertans. So I guess to answer your question, I wish Danielle Smith would push it too, but inside Confederation, the way it is so unfairly structured, do you think the East is going to give up that power to us? Would they concede that power to us? I don't think so, and I know the Liberals won't either. Blue Sky 205 says, how well is the average Quebec citizen faring since the province went on its own? What are the pros and cons? This topic should be well looked into. Well, you know, I'm happy to look into it for you. Quebec has never gone on its own. How's it faring since they went on their own? From where to where? Quebec is still firmly in Confederation. They never voted to leave. In fact, they get more from Alberta than ever before. So I guess to answer your question, they're doing great because they get all the perks of being a have-nothing within Canada while never actually having to leave. So they get provincial autonomy, they get their own separatist parties provincially and federally, they get to block pipelines, they get equalization billions from the West into their pockets from resource development that they refuse to develop on their own and that they refuse to let us develop at this point. So yeah, they're doing fine. So it sounds like it's all pros for them, but they didn't leave. They're still here. And that's about it. But on the part of it should be looked into, there were, and on the topic of Western separation, there were research documents, binders actually, of documents compiled by the separatists in Quebec to address the forces of no. As in, when they were running the referendum, the people who would object to separation based on certain issues. What would we do about the police? What will we do about the military? What will we do about the pension? What would we do about the dollar? What would we do about healthcare? They actually sat down and figured out what they would do so that when they put the referendum question to people, that they would have all the information that they needed in the referendum to answer with certainty, a yes or a no. And so for Western separatists or Western independence-minded people, depends on who you talk to and how they like that descriptor, that information's out there. Somebody's already thought about it. Somebody's sort of already done the work for Western independence-minded people. And they might want to lean on that because while most days I feel like I have very little in common with Quebec, they've done the work on this. And we should maybe lean on them a little bit. Jim Cowan asks for some investigative journalism on the financial side of COVID, how much went where, waste, etc. You know, we have been on this at Rebel News from the very beginning, from the thrown out PPE in the two warehouses, one in Regina, that were mismanaged by the Public Health Agency of Canada. By the way, Theresa Tam just got the Order of Canada for mismanaging that. The PPE that was sent to China, the PPE that never came back from China, the billions and billions of dollars in vaccine procurement, including one Canadian-made vaccine that was made in conjunction with a tobacco company that couldn't get UN or World Health Organization approval. The ventilator scandals of Frank Baylis, ventilators, millions upon hundreds of millions of dollars in ventilators that were purchased for an inflated rate from Frank Baylis and then sold for scrap after the fact. The pandemic advertising, the vaccine lotteries, even the amount of money spent on consultants for the vaccine injury program. We've covered all of that between myself, who looks into the financial implications of this stuff, and Tamara Ugolini, who has just been tracking the madness and the medical side of the pandemic. Even years later, we're just getting just a little bits of the full extent of just how bad it was. So we've done our best. We will do more. Last question is from Andrew. He says, Dear Sheila, I'm sharing my RCMP journey. And again, I want to be clear, I'm not against the RCMP. But I didn't like their vaccination policy and the actions of some of their officers during COVID brought disgrace upon the Red Surge. Anyways, let's keep going. I'm sharing my RCMP journey from 2006 to my 2023 retirement, rocked by the 2021 vaccination policy. I started at Depot, August 14th, 2006 through to January 29th, 2007, officially joining January 29th, 2007 per my ROE. August 13th, 2021, got an email on the mandatory vaccine policy echoed by K Division on August 26th. September 29th, Health Services asked my status. October 5th, only vaccinated got training. October 6th hit hard, a notice to comply, a letter mandating vaccination by October 29th, and an email for attestation and training. October 15th had attestation instructions. October 21 warned us of leave without pay by November 15th if non-compliant. October 27th, updated leave without pay policy. October 29th was the first warning. November 9th, Staff Sergeant's letter said I wasn't compliant. November 15th, I was escorted out. This is a good cop. In a time of rising crime, escorted out of the building. Like a danger, like he's the danger to the community and not the bad guys. He just wants to arrest. November 21st, Matthews had me surrender my gear, badge, ID, keys, and clear my desk under supervision, signaling termination. My pay, benefits, and pension stopped. ROE said November 18th, 2021 was my last day. I contacted NPF. I think that's the National Police Federation. November 22nd, and applied for EI November 23rd. But March 17th, 2022, EI denied me, citing the RCMP's misconduct claim. January 2022, I struggled, jobless, unable to support my family. My wife urged me forward, and February 17th, I joined RCO Energy, finding purpose. June 19th, Matthews ordered me back. I said I was terminated and committed elsewhere. She barred outside work without approval, threatening action. June 20th. She called again June 30th. Staff Sergeant Fitzgerald, citing Ottawa pressure, reinstated my pay, putting me on off-duty sick, ODS, despite my protests. Fearing trouble, I left RCO Energy June 3rd, paid last on June 10th. RCMP pay resumed June 13th. June 25, Health Services emailed about ODS. Health Services kept calling about my unrequested medical leave. A 2022 mental health note cited emotional toil, deeming me unfit. They made him unfit. October 2022, exhausted, I met Matthews at Drayton Valley McDonald's, signed discharge papers, retired January 10th, 2023. They made him quit a good job to come back, only to force him into retirement after they abused him mentally. This ordeal shook my family. There's more to say about the story, but I've run out of room. Sincerely, Andrew Granger. It's horrible. I don't like to leave the show on a dark note, but I think your story was so very important. What bothers me about the pandemic the most is that the conscientious objectors, the sort of people who are impermeable to pressure, who see something wrong and then refuse to go along with it, they were forced out of all of our public institutions. They are not the professors anymore. They are not the policemen anymore. They are not in the military. They are not the doctors anymore. And those are the people we want in positions of leadership because they have a strong moral code. Those people are gone, like Andrew here. And I think it's a disgrace. Well, everybody, that's the show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in and sticking with me as I read letters one more time. I promise I'll do better next time. God, what a horrible way to end the show. But that's a story that we all need to hear. We should not forget how good people were treated. And as I always say, don't let the government tell you that you've had too much to think.